about this book. I started reading it. I have not finished it, but I promise you I'm going to. It's called Growing Up with Raleigh, and it's written by Smedes York, the former mayor of Raleigh. Smedes York was the mayor of Raleigh. He also grew up in Raleigh, and he played basketball at NC State. And if you see the York property signs around North Carolina, you'll know that Smedes York is also one of the most successful business people in commercial real estate in the entire state of North Carolina. And Mayor Smedes York joins us now on the telephone. Good morning, Mayor. How are you?
Good morning, Henry. I'm doing fine. Already gone to my Pilates class this morning, so I'm up and at 'em.
Good for you. Good for you. Hey, I really, they sent me a copy of the book. Thank you for that, by the way. And I really wanted to finish it before I was able to do this interview, but I just didn't get to it in time. But I'm reading it, and I'm really enjoying it. And, of course, you're going to be here in town on Thursday at 5 o'clock, 5 to 7, I believe, before the football game, actually, for the book signing at Jefferson's. I was down at Jefferson's this weekend. They're very excited about that. But let's talk about the book, Growing Up Raleigh. You grew up in Raleigh and saw the transformation of a kind of a sleepy Piedmont, North Carolina town into one of the top burgeoning cities in the entire nation. And it's been quite a metamorphosis while you've been living there in Raleigh.
Correct. It's been a lot of changes, certainly the growth of population, but the book really focuses on the cultural changes between what it was like really beginning in the 50s and the 60s and 70s. And actually, I worked with an author, John Sharp, a Ph.D. He was curator of rare books at Duke University for 40 years, and we worked on this for about 5 years. But the idea
Why'd you pick a Dookie, by the way? I can't believe you picked a Duke. You picked a Duke guy to help you write the book?
You got it, but I've been trying to convert him over to NC State.
I was just saying, it could have been worse. You could have picked Art Chansky. That would have been worse.
Yeah, right. I'm looking forward to being in Greenville. There was another book, a friend of mine, Bethany Bradsher, the Classic, and about the Dixie Classic. And, of course, she's a Greenville native. And
a good friend. Worked
with her some on that book. And that was quite an interesting situation, the Dixie Classic. But so many cultural changes in the 50s. 6 of us took a trip around the country. Of course, no cell phones, and we have a lot of the postcards and memorabilia from that trip, and just reflects on how times have changed. And then, of course, the 60s, I was in the service. I went to Korea really right before the Vietnam buildup. So there's just a lot of different aspects that I thought would be interesting. And the idea is that you can read each chapter individually. You don't have to do it sequentially, so to speak. So anyway, I've had fun working on it. Now,
for a guy who grew up in Raleigh and played basketball at NC State, and then you were the mayor of Raleigh when North Carolina State won the national championship with Jim Valvano in 1983. Talk about that experience.
Well, you are absolutely correct in that. And I was the mayor, and I actually, believe it or not, debated on whether I should go to the trip out to Albuquerque, because I had a city council meeting that I would miss on that Tuesday. But I made a great decision, and our son, George, went with me, and it was an experience that will not be forgotten. That last shot, which was, I guess it was a shot that Lorenzo Charles dunked in there for just a second, you didn't think it would count. And then all of a sudden you realize it did count. But that was a very exciting time. And I came back with a few little things, sort of souvenirs, you might say, and presented it to the city council. I was proud to have gone on that trip.
It's funny, one of the things when you started growing up in Raleigh in the 50s, it's interesting. I mentioned this morning. In 1950, Raleigh had a population of about 65,000 people. Greenville's got about 90,000 now. So, but you used to walk, it's interesting, you used to walk along Hillsborough Street as a kid from your home to your grandmother's home. I mean, and can you imagine today, in any city, not just in Raleigh, but allowing a kid to walk down a busy street like that? It's just you talk about cultural changes, that just kind of points out how much things have changed.
Well, that's just one example, and we talk about the cultural changes not by saying they're cultural changes, but by showing episodes or anecdotes. In that particular one, I was no more than 5 years old, because we moved from Maiden Lane, where we lived, until I was about 5 and a half. So I know I was 5, and my grandmother lived a few blocks away, and I would walk down to her home in on Groveland Avenue in Cameron Park. So that's an example. An example on the trip we took, we had a flat tire. Had 2 flats, actually, in one day, so we didn't have a spare. And so it was at night in Texas on sort of a isolated road, and so no cell phone, so we stick our thumb out. 2 of them thumbed into the nearest city, and they got up. I think a Pepsi-Cola truck stopped and took them in. I mean, those things just harder to imagine today, and that's kind of the reason for the book.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. Now, again, if you're just joining us for the first time, Smedes York, who has written the book Growing Up with Raleigh, it's Memoirs and Reflections of a Native Son. You've spent your whole life in Raleigh, and but it's been a heck of a life. I mean, you accomplished your goals. You wanted to run your family business. You wanted to play basketball at NC State. I don't know if one of your goals when you were a kid was to be the mayor of Raleigh, but you sure have accomplished a lot, and you've got one of the top commercial real estate companies in the country, Smedes. Talk about that transition.
My dad actually didn't start York Construction Company. His father started it in 1910, and actually, C.V. York, he was my grandfather who died the year I was born, but in 1908, he was a partner with the Cobb brothers in Greenville, North Carolina, and they built the first 5 buildings at East Carolina. In Jarvis Hall, Governor Jarvis was the governor, and they asked me to come back in 2008 and help on a reenactment of the groundbreaking. So, a family business, I grew up in the family business, and my dad developed Cameron Village as our more or less hallmark type development, you might say, that's doing really well today. So I grew up wanting to be in the business and went to NC State in civil engineering. Then we had military obligations. That's part of cultural change. And then got an MBA at UNC. And but I've always grew up wanting to be part of our family business.
And you played where'd you play high school basketball? I know you went on and played for Everett Case at NC State, but where'd you go to high school?
Went to Needham Broughton right here in Raleigh.
Yeah.
In fact, where I'm sitting in the office in Cameron Village, it's about a 9-iron from here if you hit it well. But it's not too far. And actually, their football games you can hear them when they're out there practicing. But I went to Needham Broughton High School, and at that time it was interesting. The conference was Raleigh, Durham, Goldsboro, Wilson, Rocky Mount, Wilmington, Fayetteville. So we would do a lot of traveling. So we played, and then we'd play occasionally. In football, I played football and basketball in high school. Occasionally we would, for example, we played Asheville, up in Asheville. So, and we'd play Greensboro. So it was a different kind of a culture, but I loved basketball. I grew up playing every day, essentially, and was fortunate to be able to play at NC State. Those days we had mandatory freshman team, so I was a scholarship player on the freshman team, and then was redshirted a year and 2 years on the varsity. But I played very sparingly, you might say, on the varsity. But I was on the team and went on all the trips and that sort of thing. But played a lot of ball on the freshman team.
How'd you get along with Everett Case, who, of course, is the legendary basketball coach from NC State?
He was the most interesting person. Everett Case was thought of by people that just went to games as a hard-nosed type person, and he was. But off the court, when you see him around campus or go to his office, he was a totally different personality. He would always say, like, "How you doing, boy?" and just talk to you. And an interesting thing, and it's in the book, when he died, he left his money, most of his money, to his players in units. And I was flattered to get 2 units. The most units he gave anybody was 3, and some 1, some a half, and some none. But I was obviously very flattered because I wasn't one of the outstanding players by any stretch of the imagination. But quite an interesting fellow. He's a bachelor.
So he liked you, but he didn't play you.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. He didn't. I thought I was better than he thought I was. Let's put it that way.
Who were some of the other folks on the team at NC State when you played?
Well, our freshman team was John Speaks, and he was my best friend. And it's in the book. He was killed in an auto accident at the end of our senior year. But Kenny Roloff, John Punger, and Palm Sinnock, Pete Auxel, that were our freshman team. Bob DiStefano is a name a lot of folks might remember.
Yeah.
And but it was in a period that NC State had been, the year I was a redshirted was when they had the point shaving scandal. So the Dixie Classic was canceled, and they were cut back on the scholarships. And so I tell people I was a reserve on a bad team. So, but that was pretty much the truth.
Mayor Smedes York, the former mayor of Raleigh, and the name of the book is Growing Up with Raleigh. He's going to be in Greenville Thursday, 5 to 7, I believe, which, of course, is game night down here, Mayor York, so you might want to hang around and watch the Pirates. But before people head over to the stadium, you can go down to Jefferson's and get one of the books, and I presume that you'll be signing them for folks and personalizing them and be great Christmas gifts.
Be delighted to. Let me mention one other cultural change that is in the book, and it's very important. It has to do with integration. And, you know, I grew up in a segregated world, and now that is, of course, much different. And that sports played a lot into that, in my mind, in terms of my own personal journey with that. And I did get to play up in the Catskill Mountains after my freshman year, and not only played with African Americans, but went to the movies and just palled around. And that seems funny to say that today, but that was a totally different time. So that's a lot of the cultural change that we reflect on in the book.
How much do you talk about the changes in Raleigh? We've those of us who've lived in North Carolina. I used to live in Cary in the mid '80s. Those of us who've lived in North Carolina and watched the metamorphosis in Raleigh into one of the really large and nice cities in the country, and you've been there with a front row seat for all that. How much do you cover that in the book?
We cover a lot of the 70s, and that's when a lot of the growth started to really happen, and that's when I was interested in getting on the city council and got elected in 77 and then elected mayor in 79 and again in 81, and then I retired, you might say, in 83. But dealing with growth was a major issue in that period of the 70s. That's still an issue, but I think that Raleigh has done an excellent job of planning. What is happening now is so exciting, is that the urban core, residences, apartments, 5-, 6-story buildings in the downtown, restaurants in the downtown area. So that's been a wonderful change in the last few years. Now, I didn't try to reflect on all of that last 10 years or so in the book, because what I was trying to talk about was growing up with Raleigh. And, once I guess I had grown up, I didn't want to try to add a chapter, for each year that went by. But Raleigh has got a wonderful future, I think, and it's exciting to see what's happened here.
Yeah, that Glenwood Avenue area is really one of the really great areas of any city in the country now, I think. And I think you and I both, having grown up in North Carolina, you're a little older than I am, Smedes, but to see that kind of urban lifestyle where people are living in apartment homes and pedestrian communities where they walk to the grocery store and walk to the restaurants and have lunch and those kind of things. It's really kind of cool. Greenville is moving in that direction, and you'll see it. I don't know last time you've been in downtown Greenville, but there's really quite a transition going on in downtown Greenville right now that I hope you'll get a chance to see while you're here on Thursday.
Well, I do want to. I'll see that while I'm there, and of course, East Carolina University is tremendous. And one thing I'll mention, which is not in the book, going back when I'm 73 now. When I was 66, so say 68 or 9, I played 3-on-3 senior games basketball, half court, and we'd play the state finals would be down in Greenville. So I got a chance to go down a number of times and play. But Greenville is a burgeoning, wonderful community, and we're very proud of a heritage.
If you're 73, you probably, when you played at Broughton High School, you probably were a little ahead of Pistol Pete Maravich, weren't you?
Actually, Pistol Pete is younger than I am. I finished in 59. Pete played there. I guess he would have finished Broughton probably in '65, so he was about 6 years younger than I am. Yeah. A friend of mine tells a story that one game between him and Pete, they got 52 points. He said he got 2 and Pete got 50. So Pete was quite a player. And,
yeah, no doubt about it. And hey, look, I'm really excited about your book, and I hope a lot of folks will come down and visit with you and get a book on Thursday, and I wish you the best of luck. I appreciate you taking time with us this morning.
Well, it's been great talking to you, and I look forward to being down there Thursday, and Greenville and ECU are wonderful parts of our state, so I'm honored to be able to come.
I don't think you and I have ever met, but I've always held you in very high esteem, and always thought of you as one of the most successful business people in the state, and certainly through your years as mayor of Raleigh, we followed your career and your life, and so congratulations on all your success and on the book. I hope it's a big winner for you this Christmas, and hope people will buy it, get you to sign it, and give it for Christmas gifts.